Shabbat Shalom. So this Devar Torah is going to happen in several parts, and hopefully at the end I'll pull it all together. But I want to begin by telling you a story. This is a true story that happened, I believe it was December of 94 or January of 95. I had been an assistant rabbi at B'nai Emunah in St. Louis for 3 years, and it was time to return back to the New York area. And I was looking for a job, and I actually had gone to a conference at the seminary at 122nd and Broadway, and had an interview lined up, like a preliminary interview lined up with a congregation in Westchester while I was there. So it all worked out really well. And I was sitting in the seminar, it was like the last session at JTS, and it's like running long, and it's running long, and it was kind of a situation where it was not possible for me to get up and walk out of the room. It just wouldn't have worked. So I'm looking at my watch, and I'm plotting because I know that I've got to catch a train at Grand Central Terminal at a certain time in order to get out to Westchester on the Metro North. And I'm looking at my watch, I'm like, this isn't happening, this isn't happening, this isn't happening. It's like a really cold, snowy night. I'm like trying to figure out how I'm gonna get to Grand Central. And finally I go, okay, this isn't gonna happen. I'm just gonna have to catch a gypsy cab and head over to 125th and Park, which is where there's a train stop, right? Are you guys familiar with the Metro North, right? So it starts at Grand Central, goes to 125th and Park, and then it goes up to Westchester, depending on what train you're on, what part of Westchester or Connecticut you're going to. So anyhow, I get out in front of the seminary, I hail a gypsy cab, I get myself over there. It is snowing like crazy in New York. It's cold, it's a little bit windy, but I get there, and this is my first time ever having been there. Now, I don't know if folks have been to 125th Street lately, but it's been fixed up quite a bit. It's like Disneyland now. It's really nice, lots of stores and everything. But back in 1995, not so much. Okay? So I'm at 125th and Park. I walk into the train station there. It's a small little train station. I would say not even half the size of this sanctuary. And I see something that I've never laid eyes on in my entire life, which is a real live person smoking crack inside the station. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be an experience, right? So there's a lot of people in there. Because it was such a cold night, I think a lot of people were just there, perhaps homeless people who were there just to stay warm. And I walk up, I buy my ticket, and the train has, another 10 minutes or so. So I'm, all right, I'm gonna make it. I'll be able to go to this interview. I'm not gonna be late, which everybody knows you can't show up late to an interview. So I'm there in the waiting area, and there's a lot of people, and I'm standing because there's no seats. And all of a sudden, this guy walks in, and he's wearing one of these huge, like, puffy jackets, and he's got headphones on, and the music is on so loud on these headphones that I can actually hear the music, right? As is, I think everybody else in the station can hear the music as well. And I'm like, okay, now things are gonna get interesting, right? A couple minutes later, from the other side of the station, from 126th Street, a woman enters. She's wearing a skirt that is, like, I think too short for the weather outside. It's really, really cold outside, and she's wearing this sort of fur coaty kind of thing, and she walks in and she's yelling. She's yelling some guy's name. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go up to the tracks now because something's about to go down. But it was so cold outside, there was like I was like, you're just gonna have to stay here and see what happens. So she's yelling a guy's name, and then I realize, oh, she's yelling at the guy who's got the headphones on, but he can't hear his name because, the music's so loud. So I was like, oh, something's gonna go down. I don't know what this is gonna be, but this is gonna be amazing. I've already seen, someone smoking crack. What's the second thing I'll see tonight? So she finally walks across the station, and she walks up behind the guy and she grabs his shoulder, and I'm like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? And he turns around, he gives her a hug, and then he turns around, and on the bench behind him are these two big grocery bags. He hands her a bag, he takes a bag, and they start handing out coffee and sandwiches to people in the station. And I remember this like it was yesterday because I've never been so embarrassed of myself and how I got something so completely wrong. So completely wrong. And like I said, to this day, I remember it. So that was part one. Here's the second act. If you have a Chumash in front of you, which I think most of you do, I'd like you to open up your Chumashim to page 279. That's from this week's Torah portion, Parshat Vayigash. And this is the section immediately following the part that we read in the first triennial reading. So just to give you the background, Joseph, of course, has revealed his true identity to his brothers, and they have this joyful reunion. Joseph says, you got to go bring my father, and they go and they tell Jacob, your son Joseph is alive, and he says, if my son Joseph is alive, I must go see him. Okay, so that's where we are, beginning of chapter 46, page 279. So Israel set out with that which was his, Israel, of course, being Jacob, that's his other name, and he came to Beersheba, where he offered sacrifices to the God of his father, Isaac. God called to Israel in a vision by night, Jacob, Jacob. He answered, here. And he said, I am God, the God of your father. Fear not to go down to Egypt, for I will make you there into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I myself will also bring you back, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. In other words, he'll be there at the moment when you die. So from this section, is there anything unusual or strange that you see in this little piece of chapter 46, these first few verses? Anything that strikes you as extraordinary? Nothing? All right, yes. The Hineni, right? So he says, here I am. So that term is always there, and it's usually when someone's about to do something that's maybe a little extraordinary. So good, that's good. Anything else? Yes. Right, the fact that it says Israel and Jacob, right, which is a problem throughout the book of Genesis, because God says your name shall no longer be Jacob, it shall be Israel, and yet he's referred to as both. Yes. I myself. Right, so that's a little bit of a grammatical thing. It says, Anochi a'alcha, and it could just say a'alcha, right? So also interesting. Anything else? Right, that he has to, right, this is a weird thing too, right? He's leaving the land of Israel, where he's supposed to be a great and mighty nation, and it's going to happen to you while you're in Egypt, okay? These, by the way, all these things you brought up are a subject for their own sermon. Unfortunately, not what I was looking for. Okay, we're going to come back to it. Don't worry, it's fine. It's fine. I will take you down the primrose path here. You'll see where I'm going with this. Okay, now we're going to turn back to page 82. 82, right? So this is earlier in the book of Genesis. We're going back to Abraham. Actually, at this point, Abram, and he has, you may recall that there's this whole thing with these kings who are having a war, and Lot gets taken hostage. Do you remember this? This is where there's cheese in the Torah. You guys know about this? The king, Cheddar Laomer. Okay, they're not all going to be winners, but okay. All right, we're going to take a look at chapter 15, verse on page 82, chapter 15. Sometime later, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. He said, fear not, Abram, I am a shield to you. Your reward shall be very great. But Abram said, O Lord God, what can you give me, seeing that I shall die childless, and that one in charge of my household is domestic Eliezer? This is a reference to Ishmael, right? So anything weird about that or unusual? No. Pretty straightforward? Okay, all right. We're going to try third one. Rabbi Hale warned me. He told me this could happen. All right, let's turn to page 152. This is now, so in the first set of verses we saw Jacob. The last one we just looked at is Abram. Now we're going to take a look at a verse from Isaac, page 152. This is right after, you may recall that all of the wells that had been dug by Abraham were filled over, and Isaac went and he's like digging up those wells again, and he's kind of got all these conflicts with his neighbors. And it says, from there he went up to Beersheba. This is the very top of the page, beginning of the Revi'i Aliyah, 152. From there he went up to Beersheba. That night the Lord appeared to him and said, I am the God of your father Abraham. Fear not, for I am with you, and I will bless you and increase your offspring for the sake of my servant Abraham. Anything unusual? Oh, yes, back there. Oh, thank you. They all say, fear not. Right? To Jacob, fear not. To Abram, fear not. To Isaac, fear not. According to the text, what were they afraid of? What? There's nothing written there in the text that says that they're afraid. It would be one thing if it said, and there are other places where we're told that someone was, fearful. It doesn't say it anywhere. And somehow God says to each one of our patriarchs, do not be afraid. So the rabbis could not leave this alone. And by the rabbis, I don't mean Rabbi Foster and Rudin Luria and me, right? I'm talking about the ancient, right? The sages could not leave this alone. And they said that what this shows us is that they were afraid, and God understood that they were afraid, and God knew what to say to them. In other words, God was able to see what was going on inside their minds and was able to do the right thing, which is to calm them down and say, I understand that you're upset. In the case of Isaac here, it could be because he's seeing that his neighbors are not getting along. He could have, in the case of Abram, seen that there would have been a situation with the kings where they were, maybe going to take revenge on him. And here with Jacob, obviously leaving the land that was promised him to go down to Egypt, as was mentioned over here, something to be afraid about. But the text itself doesn't say what they were afraid about. There's actually Midrashim that says what they were afraid about. But here what I think is fascinating is that the rabbis say, God knows what's going on inside our heads. And this is, of course, an idea that we're familiar with from the high holidays. Right? God says the hidden things, the revealed things, God knows everything. God knows what's going on. Now, the corollary to this is, who doesn't know what's going on? Right? We don't know. Just like the day that I walked into the train station at 125th and Park, I thought I knew what was going on, but I didn't. According to the rabbis in this midrash, the only people who are capable of really understanding what's going on, the only one who's capable of understanding what's going on inside of us is God. We don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening with you. I don't know what battles you might have. I don't know what trials and tribulations you might be facing. Some of you may have seen this meme on the internet that says something along the lines of, you don't know what struggles people are going through. So, what does it say at the end of that? Who said that? Say it again, nice and loud. Be kind. Be kind. We don't know. We don't know what people are going through. So when in doubt, be kind. So I bring you this message because, of course, tonight we start a new year, 2023. And, of course, Rosh Hashanah is a time for reflection, but I think this is also a time for reflection. And we think about what do we want to do better in the coming year. And if you're like me, I know that there are times that I can be really judgmental when I make snap decisions about things, especially like the drivers around me. This is like a thing with me. Right, it's not road rage, but sometimes I just want to pull up to somebody and say, you might want to take your car into the shop because I don't think your turn signal's working, right? Okay, whatever. I got off track here. Ultimately, we really don't know what's happening with people. The only thing that we can judge is the actions that we see, and sometimes those actions are motivated or affected by terrible troubles that people are facing. And so in the end, what we really need to do is just take that advice, those 2 words on that internet meme, be kind, right? Be kind to those around you. Be kind to your fellow congregants. Be kind, of course, to your clergy. That goes without saying, right? No, be kind to your clergy. You don't always know what's going on with them. Be kind. Be kind to the people you come into contact with. And most of all, as our Torah tells us over and over again, it's the most repeated commandment in the Torah. Be kind to the stranger, because you were once a stranger in the land of Egypt. You know what it's like. Let that guide your life, not only in 2023, but in all the years ahead. Shabbat Shalom, and you should pardon the expression, Shana Tova.